Giro here for Umbra Games with a review of Undertale, currently only available on PC. Undertale is an indie game developed and written by Toby Fox. So I've been sitting here for a few minutes trying to think exactly how to review this game, and honestly I'm not completely sure what to say. After 15 minutes playing it, I had a tweet at UGPlayUndertale, aka Chibi Biscuit on YouTube, who requested this review saying, "What the hell am I playing?" Now I've finished the game and I'm still not quite sure what I just played. Now, I'm not here to offend anyone in any way, and I know if I get too many views on this, I'm bound to get some haters for it, because the game does have quite a cult following since its release in September of 2015. It is a bit challenging to review objectively because I'm not quite sure exactly what it was going for objectively, but we're going to give it a shot. Toby Fox, the creator, says he was influenced by Earthbound and Shin Megami Tensei Persona, and while I can see their influences, if you're expecting that out of this product, then you're probably going to be pretty disappointed. It classifies itself as an RPG on Steam, but it honestly felt more like playing a point-and-click adventure, where, you used arrow keys instead of a mouse to move, and added in some minigames. Earthbound, aka Mother 2 in Japan, is a great source of influence, because it's definitely in contention for me for the best role-playing game to grace the Super Nintendo. Its offbeat humor just really worked for the game. It made it charming, but there's also a great turn-based RPG being the vehicle for that humor. Shin Megami Tensei Persona, the first iteration that was released on PlayStation 1 for us, allows you to stop attacking for a turn or two and strike up a conversation during enemy encounters. Often those conversations would still end in a fight. So Toby Fox wanted to take this mechanic and allow you to play an entire game without killing a single enemy. And he pulled it off. I took what they call the true pacifist route, after making one initial mistake and restarting at the advice of Chibi Biscuit. But yes, when it says on Steam that you can truly play without killing a single monster, it's telling the truth. Sometimes you have to beat him into submission a little bit, Pokemon style, but you can avoid landing a killing blow. So we take both of these concepts, the offbeat, self-aware humor, and the monster talking, and in theory this should work, right? But what is one of the key cornerstones that makes an RPG an RPG? For me, it's gaining experience and advancing your character. In Undertale, the only way to gain these things is slaughtering monsters. And while being pacifist, you don't necessarily need the points awarded to your attack stat, while you're trying to peacefully stop enemies, they attack you, and your permanent 20 hit points and one of 6 pieces of armor you can pick up on your journey don't offer much in the way of character progression. Even if you chose to kill things though, the only ability you ever get is fight, which is why I'd hesitate in selling this as an RPG. Now the basic premise of Undertale is that you play a child of your naming, and that child falls down into the world of monsters segregated off from humanity since a great war, where the humans erected a giant barrier, keeping all monsters underground forever. Your job is to help guide this child through the realms of the underworld and back to humanity. There are several miscreants you meet along the way, each with their own unique and often eccentric personality. The jokes range from terrible puns to slapstick, as well as some situational comedy. The story forces some heartwarming Barney the Purple Dinosaur style friendship is the answer to everything dialogue, if you choose what the community sees as the correct path through the game. But I will say there are several moments of honest-to-goodness feels, and overall the story has charm. While there appear to be 3 main paths through the game, there are several things you can do to change specific things for those endings. Now, combat is turn-based, and you have the option to fight, act, use an item, or use mercy, i.e. spare or flee. Act covers several contextual options depending on the enemy you're facing. You sometimes have to comfort a crying villain, or pet a dog for example, and certain combinations of actions will turn the text of their name yellow, meaning you can then spare them, and they'll exit from the battle and often drop you some gold, but 0 experience. While you're making the attempt to placate your foe, you play a minigame controlling your heart and dodging incoming attacks, kind of like a shoot 'em up. Each enemy has its own form and pattern of projectiles. As you progress through the game, you encounter additional rules. For example, if you don't move when a blue projectile passes over you, you don't take damage, and orange is the opposite. But again, treating battles as a combination of trial and error puzzle solving and a WarioWare style microgame is probably the best explanation for it. What I think most would consider actual puzzles in the game are more sparse than I would have enjoyed. Now if I had to provide a rough estimate, I'd say about 50% of the time you're not in battle is spent going through and reading dialogue. 10% would be solving puzzles, and 40% would be navigating the terrain. A few of those 10% puzzles are pokes at puzzle solving in video games, and end up not even being something you have to or get to solve. One thing I don't have any issue with at all is the art. The world and its denizens are charming in a very retro manner. The simulated chiptune soundtrack adds so much to this game. One thing I find particularly great about chiptunes in games in general, back to the NES days, is that they used to have to make the notes in the composition count due to space limitations. So many games get into this orchestral, atmospheric-only mood where the soundtrack isn't memorable and many games just end up sounding the same. So I'd really say this game definitely isn't for everyone. Of the reviewers and commentators I personally follow, for example, Zero Punctuation's top game of 2015. But Penny Arcade didn't want to touch it because they think they're too old and just don't get it like the 13-year-olds do. I often get a vomit reflex immediately when people start talking about getting an indie title, because I'm not sure that's usually the problem. Also, Zero Punctuation refuses to talk about anything specifically with the game because knowing what it is before going in will ruin the experience, so if you haven't played it and you're watching this, I'm sorry if I did that for you. But I did want to help clear up some expectations, because I know expectations for me can change the level of enjoyment I have during an experience, be it games or movies. So I guess I have to do something a little different here. And let me remind you, before I say it, that I use a true 0 to 100 scale, with 50 being an average game, anything above it above average, anything below it below average. Undertale, rated as a turn-based role-playing game on my scale, received a 46 out of 100. Objectively speaking, taking the pacifist route here and treating every encounter as a mini-puzzle with a mini-game included, you could see this as a puzzle-adventure game, and on that scale it hits at a 61 out of 100. So if you enjoy the retro feel, enjoy puzzles and dialogue, and are looking for something a little bit different than your average game, and a charming way to spend 6 or 7 hours, then Undertale might just be for you. If you're looking for a turn-based role-playing game in the same vein as Earthbound and Persona, your $10 is probably better spent elsewhere. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. If you like objective, no-gimmick video game reviews and want to see more, feel free to subscribe to my channel for updates. I'm also on Twitter, @Umbra Games.